This video is meant to review the student expression activity, in which you were to imagine you were the principal of a high school, and then for each of the situations described, you had to decide whether or not the school and you were able to limit this student's expression. So not only that, you have to explain your reasoning then and use a Supreme Court precedent to justify your decision. So the first situation is a student is wearing a shirt with a marijuana leaf on it. So you have to decide, can you force the student to change his shirt or punish him for wearing it? And the case on point is Morse versus Frederick, and because of that, and because marijuana is a drug, the speech is unprotected. Okay, Morse versus Frederick says that if there's any message, any expression that advocates the use of drugs or alcohol, then it can be limited and or punished. So in this case, you could stop the person from wearing that shirt. Now, second question. A student makes a sexually explicit comment during class. All right, so you have a kid who makes a sexually explicit comment, whether there's profanity or not really doesn't even matter. But in this case, again, the speech would be unprotected. And the case that would justify it would be Bethel versus Frazier, which said basically that students can limit expression if it is sexually inappropriate, lewd, or offensive, has no educational value, and then you can punish the student or limit the expression. The third question. A student is wearing a shirt that depicts the President of the United States on a wanted poster. And so, a shirt similar to this. So could you punish this student? Could you suspend him? Could you force him to take the shirt off? And in fact, that speech is protected. And so the school cannot punish the kid, cannot make him change. And the case on point that justifies the decision is Tinker versus Des Moines. That shirt is seen as symbolic speech. And so was the marijuana leaf t-shirt for that matter. It's just certain symbolic speech is protected and certain symbolic speech is not. This would be protected because that shirt has a political message, and you have to remember that the government can't censor expression just because they disagree with the message. So even if the principal as an individual or the school in general disagrees with the whole Obama on a wanted poster shirt, it cannot punish the student for it. Question 4. The school newspaper is planning on running a story exposing the common cafeteria practice of serving students food that's past its expiration date. Okay, so the question comes, can you censor the newspaper as the principal? If that expression would somehow disrupt the educational process or potentially harm students, it can be censored. But in fact, because this does neither, and in fact is trying to protect students, it would be protected. And the case that we use to protect it is one that seemingly gives schools the power to censor, and that's Hazelwood versus Kuhlmeyer. In that case, the school was allowed to censor a newspaper over 2 articles. One dealt with teen pregnancy, and though the girls weren't named, pregnant teenagers from the school weren't named, they could be identified, and that puts them in line for harassment, etc. And so that was said to protect the students. And there was also an article that dealt with divorce, in which a girl basically badmouths her father, says he's never around, doesn't do anything for them, but the reporter never called the father for a comment, and so they said that was bad journalistic practice, and so they were able to censor the school, or censor the newspaper. But it also said that's the only time you can do it, when it's potentially disruptive or potentially harm students. That's not the case in this situation, so the speech would be protected. Fifth question. The student-produced literary magazine contains a student poem that contains the F word. Okay, and so you have a situation where you have profanity within a school publication, and because it's a school publication, and we're going to come back to Hazelwood, it's unprotected, because Hazelwood wasn't limited to just school newspapers. It was basically any school publication, so a yearbook, a literary magazine, a play even. All of those are subject to censorship based on the criteria, and because it's indecent or lewd, you could stop the speech. Question 6. Students wearing a gay pride button. Okay, so the question is, can that student be forced to take it off? And the answer is no. That is protected speech. And again, It's an example of symbolic speech. So the case that's on point is Tinker versus Des Moines. That's a political message, and so it is protected. On the flip side, question 7, a student is wearing a T-shirt that says homosexuality is a sin. Okay, so in this shirt it says homosexuality is shameful on a piece of tape across the back of someone. That is also protected, because though many people would not agree with that sentiment, it is political speech, and Tinker versus Des Moines would protect the person wearing the shirt. Question number 8. The drama class is going to stage a student-written play that contains a scene in which an 18-year-old student appears partially naked. Alright, so the question becomes, is that protected? The student's 18, however, it's still a school production, and thus falls under Hazelwood versus Kohlmeyer, and it is unprotected. That could potentially harm students in some way, either the student is actually taking their clothes off or the student body at large, so it could be censored. Question 9. A student posts on his Facebook page that a female student in the school has a sexually transmitted disease, which it turns out is true. This was posted during a computer class. Does the female student have any right to sue the poster? Why or why not? Now, whether or not the school punishes the person in this case really isn't what we're looking at. We're looking at, is there a civil lawsuit? And what would be the grounds on which to sue would be that the student can claim it was defamation. Okay, where you say something that can harm someone's reputation. And at that point, we have to decide whether the allegation is true or false, what was said about the girl is true or false. Because it is true, the girl could not sue for defamation. You can't sue for defamation if someone says something that can harm your reputation, but that is true. So you can't sue for defamation in that case. Then question 10, a student creates a fake Facebook page as if you, the principal, created the page. It contains several false claims about the principal's personal life. Do you have any right to sue as the principal? Why or why not? Well, again, it's a question of defamation. And just let's take a second to kind of talk about the difference between libel and slander. Libel is the written form of defamation. Slander is the spoken form. And so both of these situations we talked about with Facebook pages, because it's written, it would be libel. If it was spoken, it would be slander. But again, let's come back to the idea of the Facebook page, the false Facebook page about you. Again, we have to determine whether the things are true and false. They are false, and then we have to look and say, does it harm your reputation? And in this case, if people believe that, it could harm your reputation, and so you could sue for defamation. So, that's kind of a review in some ways of both lessons 2 and 3, freedom of the press and freedom of speech, because we touched upon cases from both situations. So, that's the kind of thing where you have to apply the precedents, and that's what we're looking for you to do by the end of this unit.